Jeremy walked the kid with special needs to his classroom. He said to the teacher, "We had a little problem on the playground. I took care of it." Then he marched himself into the principal's office and he said to the secretary, who is still there to this day, and he said, "You better call my mom. We're going to have a problem." And there were no cell phones back then. And so Tracy, the secretary, said, "Why? What happened?" And then over the loudspeaker, you heard, "There's a child injured on the playground. There's a child injured on the playground." And I said to Jeremy right then and there, I said, "Go get your coat, go get your bag. We're going home." And they said to me, "He doesn't have to go home." I said, "Oh, yes, he does. We're going for lunch and then we're going to go for ice cream." And they said, "Really? You're going to reward this terrible behavior?" I said, "Jeremy only hit him because I told him to hit him." I said, "When things get so bad, just hit him and you'll be done with this kid, this bully." I said, "You allowed this kid to be a bully?"
Yes.
I told Jeremy, "If he won't stop, we'll get it. Just deck him and be done with it." And sure enough, that's exactly what Jeremy did.
Hello, Mama Says listeners. I'm your host, Amber Autry, and it is so good to be back. The two humans you were just listening to are Jeremy Drazner and his mom, Melissa. Jeremy is an amazing person and fantastic comedian based in Chicago, and his mom is, of course, a badass. This episode is so good. We talk about normalizing therapy at a young age, and they both share stories that will have you on the edge of your seat. Specifically the one where Jeremy gets stranded in Israel and his mom has to come save him. It's amazing. If you're not following Jeremy, please do so on Instagram at jdraz92. That's JDRAZ92. And if you love this podcast, please share it with a friend so I can keep doing this amazing interview process that makes me so happy. Again, thank you for being here and enjoy this episode of Mama Says. Hello.
Hey.
Hi, beautiful humans. How are you?
I'm going to turn it up a little. Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. What a cool living room or space.
Thanks.
Thank you. Aaron Klopfer came for my dad's Shiva and he was like, "This feels like a very nice Jewish home." And I was like, "Well, it is." So.
Well, it is. Hi, Melissa. I'm Amber.
Hi. I'm the mom.
Oh, nice to meet you. Thanks for
Nice
doing
to
this.
meet you.
This is wonderful. So I always like to start with the mom, of course. Melissa, can you tell me what your life was like before you were a mom?
Before I was a mom?
You're like,
Well, that was 33 years ago, and I don't remember what I had for breakfast, so I'm going to say dull and boring. I don't know. It was, yeah. Oh. I don't really remember a time I wasn't a mom, you know?
Yeah.
Because Jeremy's my youngest, not my oldest, so I've been a mom a long time.
Yeah.
Almost
Wow.
33 years. Yeah, a long time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So how many kids do you have?
I have two.
Okay.
My daughter is old, Abigail. She's going to be 33 next week. And Jeremy.
That's beautiful. Did you always want to be a mom?
Always. Yeah.
Like since you were little, like what?
Oh, yeah. And I was in charge, because I was the oldest in my family. So I bossed my sister around, then I bossed my husband around, and now I boss my children around.
It was meant to be.
When I was sick in the hospital, they said to me, "Oh, what's your goal?" I said, "Look, I got to get out of here. I got kids to finish raising." And they're like, "How old are your kids?" I'm like, 32 and 29. They're like, "Oh, no. I'm in this for the long haul." I said, "I'll aggravate them."
6-year-olds were coming in, but it was just me.
Oh, what's that like, Jeremy? Like hearing your mom say that, do you feel
Oh, well, growing up, like it was like pretty obvious that mom was like born to be a mom, like she was always the I was a very difficult child to raise. Very nice, but a pain in the ass. That's what I like to say. And because that's how I was described by every adult in my life. But like my mom was always the one who was at the school fight, if I got in trouble for a stupid reason, she was fighting them to make sure that they'd realize that that wasn't right and that I wasn't in trouble. But if I did something to justify being in trouble, I heard about it. I remember going to high school, mom was like, if you're gonna drink, call me, I'll pick you up, but don't drink and drive. And if you're going to get arrested, have the police take you because you don't want to deal with me. It's better for you to deal with the police. So. But yeah, she was always the boss of the family and ran the show. So
What was Jeremy like as a kid, in your words, Melissa?
He was a pain in the ass. Jeremy decided early on that school was not his thing. In nursery school, he didn't do any of the art projects. He didn't want to get dirty. He had a tactile issue, whatever. Then when we got to grade school, he went to a private school where there was a sense of entitlement, and he learned that he didn't have to do shit because his mother was going to bail him out. He knew that there was a fine line to draw, and he never stepped over the line too often. But he was difficult. He was rough. But the school knew me as, I always say I'm like a mama bear. You don't like me? That's okay. I got thick skin. You're mean to my kids? You better run. You better run and hide because I will come after you, guns a-blazing.
Yes.
The school knew it, and yeah, that's how we got him through. That's how we got him through school.
My 8th grade English teacher lived down the street, and she would like come over, and like I'd be playing outside. She was like, "You have a paper due, go inside." Ring the doorbell and tell my mom I actually did have homework. That was a real bummer. But besides that,
do you remember a particular time where you had to go to the school where like something was silly or?
Oh, they were big on taking away recess. That was like the big thing there, like, oh, your kid misbehaved, you're taking away recess. Well, recess was the one thing he liked about school.
Oh.
And I would say you can't take away his recess. It's inappropriate. It's, I was a teacher, so I knew the buzzwords, the lingo, the whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, we're not taking away his recess. So I was constantly fighting with him, fighting with the school to make sure that they didn't take away recess.
Yeah.
They took away recess from me on September 10th, 2001. And my mom was in the school on September 11th. And we found out about the planes hitting the towers while she was telling them that they can't take away recess from me. And then she looked at the principal, was like, should I take Jeremy home? And he was like, nah, it's fine. Why should he watch it on TV? And she left. And like everybody else was being pulled from school. And I was like, I wonder when my mom's going to pick me up. Like, wasn't she supposed to be here today?
But, we did other stupid things, just because he really hated school. He really hated it. When he was younger, he was playing on the playground with a child with special needs. And the bully of the playground comes up to Jeremy and he pokes him and he goes, you must be retarded because you play with retard. And Jeremy decked this kid. Jeremy decked him. I mean, knocked the crap out of him. The kid went flying to the ground. So, of course, the child who had special needs got upset, and not Jeremy. Jeremy didn't care. And nobody noticed that the kid is laying on the ground. Jeremy walked, the school was built in a square. Jeremy walked the kid with special needs to his classroom. He said to the teacher, we had a little problem on the playground. I took care of it. Then he marched himself into the principal's office and he said to the secretary, who is still there to this day.
Wow.
He was 7, still there to this day. And he said, you better call my mom. We're going to have a problem. And there were no cell phones back then. And so Tracy, the secretary, said, why, what happened? And then over the loudspeaker you heard, there's a child injured on the playground. There's a child injured on the playground. Well, he wasn't injured. He was almost dead. Jeremy was much, much bigger than this little boy. And the secretary said, Jeremy, do you know anything about that? He goes, oh yeah, I hit him. I hit him hard. He wouldn't stop and he was making fun. And I told him, keep it up. I'm going to hit you. My mom said I can hit you. They called me. They, we're going to have a meeting, and you and your husband and the other kids' parents. I said, I don't care. You can have a meeting all you want. And I said to Jeremy right then and there, I said, go get your coat, go get your bag. We're going home. And they said to me, he doesn't have to go home. I said, oh, yes, he does. We're going for lunch, and then we're going to go for ice cream.
Oh.
And they said, really? You're going to reward this terrible behavior? I said, Jeremy only hit him because I told him to hit him. I said, when things get so bad, just hit him and you'll be done with this kid, this bully. I said, you allowed this kid to be a bully?
Yes.
I told Jeremy, if he won't stop, we'll get it. Just deck him and be done with it. And sure enough, that's exactly what Jeremy did.
Wow.
He never said another word to Jeremy.
No.
And I said to the mother, the next day when we had the meeting, I said to the mother, look, they're going to be in this school together for a long time. There's 60 some kids in the class. Let's make a deal. You don't invite Jeremy to your birthday parties. I won't invite your kid to our birthday parties. No play dates, no nothing. And she looks at me and she said, well, I don't tell my 7-year-olds who they can and cannot play with. I let them make their own decisions. And I said, well, that's where we differ. I said, I make all his decisions, and I do tell him who he can play with. And your son is not going to be the one that he's going to go play with. And that was it. And Jeremy never spoke to the kid again. That was in 2nd grade. When they graduated in 8th grade, he still hadn't spoken, and that was it.
Wow.
He never had another problem on the playground, not with that bully, not with any bully, because they knew that he had permission to deck them if they really got out of hand, and he would.
But only if they were being mean to people with special needs. That was the line.
Yeah, I mean, but I used to take him out of school for stupid things, He needed new shoes. Oh, let's go now. It's not crowded now. It's crowded after school.
I faked sick a lot to get out of school, and Mom finally was like, you just got to say if you don't want to go. Like, I don't want to worry about you being sick. If you need a mental health day, just take it. And I was like, I don't know what mental health is, but I guess I'm going to start saying that.
That is so amazing and badass. Like, I just love the honesty and realness. Did you grow up like that, Melissa? Like, were your parents like that?
Yeah, I did. And I just felt that, I mean, listen, if you are naive enough to think your kid isn't going to drink, your kid's going to be the one in rehab. If you're naive enough to think that your kid isn't going to have sex, you're going to be the grandma first, because
yes.
I mean, it's just the reality. And, I would rather raise a child in reality than in this fantasy land of, and we just never did. My husband and I just didn't believe in it. If we had a problem, we talked about it, we worked it through, let's keep going.
That's wonderful.
We didn't make a big deal out of,
And growing up, Mom was very clear. She was like, I love you and your sister, but we are not friends.
Yes.
Like, I am your mother. I'm the one who makes the rules. If you don't like the rules, tough. Like, that was it.
Well, I used to say, this is not a democracy.
Yeah.
This is a dictatorship, and I'm the dictator.
Yeah.
And even my husband's like, yep, she is. Like, yep. They would call him if they couldn't find me, because we didn't have cell phones. They'd call Rick at his office, and he'd be like, you're going to need to talk to my wife. You're going to need to talk to my wife. You're going to need to talk to my wife. They finally stopped calling.
Yeah.
And when we would drive past the school, I would say, Rick, do you know what this is? And he'd be like, yeah, I do. I go, this is where the kids go to school. I don't think you ever knew that. And because it was a private school, there was a carpool line. And it was chaos at its finest. And at 3:30, the Northbrook police were like all over it. I mean, it was crazy. And one time he was with me when I had to do the pickup. And he's looking around and he's like, this is ridiculous. This is the stupidest system. And I looked at him and I said, shut your mouth. They're going to put you on a committee. Shut your mouth. They're going to put you in charge of a committee. And he's like, I'm not doing a committee. I said, then shut your mouth and just follow along, because this is how we do it. I said, you know, so-and-so's always the first car. We know she's the first car. That's where she is. I am not the first car. I'm towards the end of the line. That's why you see chaos here, you know. Oh boy.
The politics of being a mom and like, you know, knowing the ins and outs.
In Gargoyle, you know.
It was a Jewish school, so everyone had their opinion on how things should work, so nothing actually got done. They were like, this is what we're gonna do. It may not work, but you will all figure it out. It'll be fine.
Yes. Yeah. You mentioned like that you always wanted to be a mom. What's something that maybe surprised you about being a mom? Because you seemed so like you got it down, but what's something that was like,
yeah, well, I mean, I say it now because they're all grown up and on their own, but you know, at the time you're like, oh my God. I used to talk to my therapist all the time. Like, am I doing a good job? Like, you just don't know if you're doing a good job. There's no grade at the end of the semester. There's no, you know, like, are they going to come out so screwed up that, oh boy, we really fucked this up? Or are they going to be like, oh, okay, they're living, they're breathing, no one's dead on your watch. Yeah, we did a good job. And there's just no way of knowing. And, you know, I was luckier than most because they were both very good kids. They still are very good kids, but you know, we didn't play any of these games. I mean, I wasn't their friend. I wasn't their, you know, I mean, I used to say that all the time. You know, I'm the boss, I'm in charge. And if there was a problem, they knew that, you know, especially with the drinking and you know, I always used to say, you get pulled over, you better make sure they lock you in a tight cell, because when I'll get my hands on you, you're a dead man. I used to say it all the time. You're a dead man.
And I think the Buffalo Grove police knew that too. Like they're
like, come on.
They're like, well, because like my neighbors and we used to like play tennis really late at night at the park, and it was against the law. And the police would come and they're like, we won't drive you back. Just tell your mom that we stopped you. I was like, I'm definitely not telling
I
her.
am not. I love that, because my mom said a lot of the same things that you said growing up. And Jeremy, do you feel like that relationship allowed you to like be closer to your mom as an adult, like appreciate?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. You know, my mom was strict, but I just didn't break her rules. You know what I mean?
right.
Like in high school, I didn't drink. I was like the president of every club at my high school, and so we had like all these like no use contracts. And so I was like, well, I guess if I want to be a freshman mentor, I'm not going to, or I want to be on Operation Snowball. And then I found out like after high school that I was the only one who actually followed the contracts. But like, I just like was too busy to be breaking the rules like that.
Yeah.
I think the only time I like really broke the rule was I was in a car with a bad driver, like during my like synagogue's youth group. And like my mom called me and she like heard that there was too much laughter, and she was like, you're never driving with him again. Like, that's it. She was like, I'll pick you up. She was like, and so.
I love when you hear teenagers laughing and you're like, no, there's trouble there.
Yeah. If you hear teenagers laughing in a car, it's never a good sign.
And you know, what my dad used to always, I mean, both my parents used to say to me when I was in high school, if you find yourself in trouble, call. And I remember one time I was in trouble. I mean, I was in a house. I knew who lived in the house, but we were in Wilmette. I grew up in Northbrook. Wilmette was the other side of the world practically. I mean, you had to drive on the highway to get there. And and I remember I called my dad and he's like, what's wrong? I said, somebody better come and get me. He's like, where are you? I go, I don't know. And he's like, look around, see if there's a piece of mail, see if there, you know, and I did. And I looked around the kitchen and I found their mail, and their parents were out of town. So the mail was piling up, and sure enough, I read my dad the address, He's like, I know where that is. He said, I'll be there in about 30 minutes. He said, just get your stuff together. And if anyone else needs a ride, I'll come and get them. And no questions asked. I don't want to know what they're doing. And I said, oh, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, there's a funny smell. And there's, and he goes, okay. He goes, I know exactly what they're doing. He's like, I'll be there in 30 minutes. And he was. And me and two of my girlfriends, I'm like, my dad's coming. They're like, good, let's go. So that's just, I just assumed that's how all the parents were. And so when I always told them, if you get into trouble, even when they were little, Jeremy didn't like sleeping over at anyone's house. He hated it. There were goofy rules. They, once the lady cleaned the kitchen, you couldn't have a snack or whatever. And I was like, we don't have rules like that. So he'd call me. He'd be like, can you come and get me? I'm done. I'm like, yeah, I'll come and get you.
Yeah.
And we did. And, my husband would be like, okay, how long you think he'll last at this sleepover? I go, about 20 minutes. And I used to always say to him, don't unpack. Like, don't take your stuff out of your backpack and just leave it all together. And then if you want to come home, it's just easier to get all your stuff. And yeah, that's a good idea. And finally, by the end, he didn't even take a sleeping bag anymore. He'd be like, yeah, I'm not going to stay. He's like, you want to pick me up at 9? I'm like, yeah, 9's good. I said, you'll eat the pizza, you'll eat the ice cream, you'll watch the movie. I'll get you at about 9. And he, I said, if I have to wait a little bit, I'll wait, He's like, okay.
And I tell the parents, be like, if I fall asleep, wake me up. My mom's picking me up.
I'm not staying.
I don't want to be here in the morning.
Wasn't his thing, really.
When I was younger, I always woke up so early, and my mom also woke up early, but my dad and sister could have slept for days. They could sleep till 3 p.m. And my mom taught me how to use the microwave.
Oh.
And so she would say, put a bagel on a plate and put it in the microwave for 30 seconds and just eat breakfast and don't wake anyone up. And I put it in for 30 minutes and I went to the bathroom first and the smoke detector went off.
Oh no.
And that was the last time I was allowed to use the microwave until my bar mitzvah. But I would keep waking my dad and sister up, so we would start going out for breakfast. And it became our thing where we went out for breakfast, and it's still our thing.
Really?
All these years later, is we love going out for breakfast with each other. And mom is like the most beloved customer of every restaurant she goes to. And all the owners know her. We never wait. And so even small things to just have behavior management turned into nice traditions that are still happening in adult life, which is really nice.
That's beautiful. Because you live close to each other, right?
No, mom lives in the suburbs. She lives about 45, 50 minutes, an hour away.
Oh, okay.
And I live near Second City, so.
Oh, got you. Well, that's nice.
I'm always happy to drive and all that, and so is she. And I live 5 minutes away from my grandmother, so.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, Melissa, did you ever have an inkling that Jeremy was going to do comedy?
No. As a matter of fact, Jeremy, the year he decided to do comedy, he hated his job. Hated it. I'm quitting. This is the worst. And my husband said to him, you can't quit. First of all, you're a teacher. You can't quit. But second of all, you work for people we know. So you can't quit. Why don't you go find a hobby? All right, he's going to find a hobby. And we thought that would pass. And the next thing we know, he calls up and he says, I'm taking a writing class at Second City. And I looked at my husband, I go, does he know how to write? Do we know if he knows how to write? He goes, who cares? It's not for a grade. We don't care. Let him do whatever he wants. And the next thing we know, one class turns into 2 classes, and then he auditioned for this one little show. And he gets the part. And so my husband said to him, what, did nobody else audition? Nobody else in the whole city of Chicago auditioned for this show that you got the part? He goes, no, it's a great part. It's whatever. And I helped Jeremy sell the tickets. And I kept saying to all my friends, I'm like, I really don't know what this is about. I don't really know what this is about. I said, it could be a disaster. It could be great. I just have no way of knowing. They're like, we don't care. It'll be an activity. We don't care. It'll be an activity. And the next thing you know, he did this show. It was hilarious. He was hilarious. And everybody's looking around. They're like, Melissa, did you? I said, I had no idea. I had no idea. And it snowballed into this, like, now we're going to Second City every weekend, every show, and I would say to him, I'm not inviting anybody to the earlier shows because it takes you guys a while to get the show really good. But the last show of the run is usually fabulous. So that's the one we would sell tickets to, I would sell tickets to anybody, and it was something. It's been a ride, that I will tell you. It's been something. And we kept saying to him, listen, we know nothing about this. We cannot give you any guidance. We cannot say to you, what a great idea, or what a crappy idea, or nothing. We can do none of that. The only thing we can tell you is this doesn't pay enough for you to pay your rent, and you need health insurance.
Yeah.
I said, aside from that, you're in charge. You're going to have to make your own decisions. We don't even, you're going to some bar to do what? I mean, we didn't understand this whole stand-up thing and pulling names out of a bucket to see if he gets on or doesn't get. I'm like, okay, have fun. Okay, have fun. I go, do we have to go to these things? And he's like, no, I'll let you know when you have to go. And I'm like, okay.
So you've seen his stand-up too.
Oh, we've seen everything. I've never really, have I missed the show?
I did stand up before I was doing Second City. I just wasn't telling them. I was like so embarrassed by it. I didn't want to like come out as a comedian yet to them. And so, but the first time I did the Zanies Tuesday 10 showcase, everybody came, the whole family. And I remember talking to Matt Castelvi, who was hosting in the green room. I was like, yeah, my whole family's here. He was like, how would you know? I was like, they're the ones wearing the yarmulkes. Like, you'll notice who they are. And they were all there. And like, my dad and I were huge comedy fans. Like, we used to listen to John Panette, Jackie Mason, albums in the car. Like, we would watch all those specials. But we just didn't know that anyone could be a comedian. We just thought they found funny people, and that's how it happened.
Right.
That, like, your first shows are at Laugh Factory, and that's it. And so, but when the first time I did Zanies, he was like, couldn't believe it, because he used to go to every John Panette show at Zanies, and he was so excited. And like, he loved the fact that I did comedy, and Mom was like kind of mortified by it in the beginning. But I think once like the show started getting good and like people were actually laughing, and she like my family would see like other people coming up being like, wow, that was really great. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, well, at least something's happening. We don't know what's happening, but we'll let him continue. If he's having fun, we'll continue doing it. And so
that's awesome. I bet you were psyched. Oh, what
was really the most exciting of all of them. And they kept saying, my mother and I handed them my credit card, and I said, here, I want to pay for all their drinks, like the whole group, everybody sitting here. And they're like, oh, I said, and they're only going to drink water bottles. So like, what? I'm like, yeah, they're not going to eat anything because they're religious. I said, just bring me a case of water, just 2 bottles for everybody sitting on these things. And, my aunt's like, I don't drink bottles of water. I said, well, take it home as a souvenir. This is the most expensive water bottles you've ever had in your life. Take them home as a souvenir. And that's what we did.
And the second time I did Zanies was on Passover. And so like my family wouldn't even drink like the Diet Cokes, but there's nothing I like more than a Zanies Fiji water. It just tastes better there.
Definitely.
And so I just like had my backpack, and there were all these Fiji waters on the table, and I just started loading it into my bag.
We'll take them all. We'll take it. We bought the case. We'll take the case home. Yeah, so they knew who we were. They knew who we were, And then they also knew who we were because when Jeremy was finished, they would go home. The place would empty out.
Really? Like even if there were comedians after?
Oh, it didn't matter. They had no interest in any of the other comedians. My dad would go out. He'd be like, yeah, I need a cigarette. They're like, sir, the show's not over. He goes, it's over for me. He goes, I saw the one kid I wanted to see. He said, and he would say to my mom, I'll meet you outside. And he'd go outside and he'd smoke a pack of cigarettes and wait for us to be finished. And, I said to my husband, we can't leave. It's not nice. Some of these people don't have anybody here and they're friends of Jeremy's. And how can we just walk out? And
the first time I
didn't.
The first time I did Zanies, I was like, yeah, they told us to be clean. Like it won't be a problem. Bring everyone. And I went first, and I obviously did my clean shtick, whatever. And then the next comic is talking about giving rim jobs and stuff like that. And everyone was just so dirty. It was like, I remember like Dan Carlson was like, what part of clean don't you guys understand?
And it was swear words, and it was about sex, and it was about not just sex between a man and a woman. It was,
And like my family's like very religious.
Right.
So
they were like.
And I remember my uncle coming up to me after the show and being like, am I going to have to explain to Bubby what a rim job is?
I'm like, oh God. And I was like, okay. I said, no, we're not inviting anyone to like Zanies anymore. And so whenever Jeremy has a show, I always say to him, appropriate for who? Like, who is this appropriate for? Is this appropriate for your friends, or is this appropriate for my mother? Is this appropriate, And he'd be like, oh, yeah, don't invite anybody, just in case. He goes, because he says, I just don't know. And I'm like, okay, then we're going to just take a pass. My mother would be like, where are we going? I'm like, we have a show, whatever the date. And she's like, all right, I'll tell my sisters. I said, nope. Jeremy said, we're going to just go us. And she said, okay, then that's what we're going to do. Just us.
And your mom's cool with like.
She doesn't care. All she wants is to see Jeremy. She just doesn't care what it is. She doesn't care if she doesn't understand it. When we go to Second City, my parents are the two oldest by a lot. They're in their 80s. And, my dad's just sitting there and he's nodding and he's, and I'm like, Dad, did you understand any of it? He goes, I didn't even hear it. He goes, I turned off my hearing aid. He just didn't even care. It just didn't matter. All they cared about was seeing him on stage.
Yeah.
Like, that's my grandson. That's my grandson. Like they didn't care, didn't notice, Jeremy did one sketch show that they had to call up members of the audience. And I kept saying to Jeremy, do not call up my parents. He said, don't worry, they won't. And I go, no, I'm not kidding. Do not call up my parents. And he's like, okay. And I would see the kid that was calling up the people. I go, do not call up my parents. Call up anybody you want, but not my parents. He's like, okay. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like they think I'm like hiding my parents because they're like so funny and it'll be great. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not gonna be funny or great. It's gonna be a nightmare. And so they never did, but oh God.
Our family is very funny. Like I feel like that was just always something. And everybody's funny in different ways. Like my dad was like the king of dad jokes, and he always had a pun. He always had this. He always had that. When he like used to do bingo for the Buffalo Grove days, and he had a list of from 1 to 75 of a pun for each number. And people would come up to us like when we were having dinner and be like, tell your husband to just call the numbers. We don't want the jokes. We just want the bingo numbers. And then when he died, everyone was like, we're going to miss Rick and his jokes. And we're like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You guys used to threaten us at dinner. And like mom is like very like dry humor. Like she never tries, but she's always so funny. My sister's very funny. Like we used to we roast my grandparents a lot. Like it's just like we are always laughing in our family. Everyone's very funny. I'm just the only one who decided to go to a bar every night to do the jokes on stage.
Yeah. So what is the coolest trait you find about each other? Like something cool that you love about each other?
Jeremy has a very big heart. He's always been the defender of the underdog. Like if there was, a bully, he stepped in. If someone was mean to a girl, he stepped in. Even as he got older, and he went off to college, and, I remember my husband said to me, I'm going to talk to Jeremy about, and I looked at him and I said, you can do anything you want. And then I said to Jeremy, now here's the conversation. Ready? And he goes, what? And I go, when she says no, she's not kidding. This isn't like maybe she's saying yes. No, 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 no. Err on the side of she said no, that means no, walk away. And I said, and just remember, she's somebody's daughter, she's somebody's sister, and we're not interested in any nonsense. So he not only for any of the girls he was friends with, but like if he saw a girl being picked on at a bar or at a frat house, or he was the defender of the underdog, always has been. And that's why he's a special ed teacher too. Like I feel like that's why he's a special ed teacher for two reasons. One, because he was the defender of the underdog, but two, he hated school so much. He was determined to make sure that kids didn't hate school like he hated school. He blamed the school system and the teachers and, because they didn't, back in those days, they didn't care about a child's development or, they talked all the buzzwords, but they didn't mean it if it meant extra work. And he was determined that was not how other kids were going to go to school and whatever. So that's his biggest one, is that he has a big heart. The defender of the underdog.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing about my mom is she'd just do anything for her family, When money was tight, she worked multiple jobs. If there was an issue with school, she was the one who dealt with it. In the beginning of COVID, my grandfather was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. She didn't even think of what it would mean to her. Her parents were moved to the suburbs, and I moved with home to take care of them, but also to be taken care of, I talk to my mom every day. She's the person who talks me off the ledge when I am frustrated with teaching, when I'm frustrated with comedy, when I'm frustrated with life in general. She wants the best for everybody. She's always wants to have make sure that we're having a good time. We went on a cruise right before COVID, and she just made sure that everybody got to do what they wanted to do. And so we went for every morning. We woke up for breakfast. She got my sister jewelry, if that's what she they love shopping. Then she was like, just sit in the air conditioned area. We're shopping now. And we signed up to swim with sea lions and manatees.
What?
It was so funny. They have us put on these life vests. Mine was way too small on me. Hers was way too big. We get to the pool and she's like, oh, I'm not going in. And she sat on the bench, and me and my sister, neither of us can swim very well, are just in the middle. The sea lion keeps snapping at me. And I almost got bit 3 times, and she was like, that's why I didn't go in. And, but
You almost got bit?
They kept saying to me, but you paid. I said, I don't care. Money is gone now. I said, but I'm not.
But even when
I took the life vest off, I said, here you go.
I'm not paying with my life.
We had to go on the ocean for the manatees, and there was a terrible storm coming. It was whipping at us, and she was like, oh, that did not look like a lot of fun. I was like, it wasn't. But we have so much fun. We really do. But even there've been a lot of difficult times in our lives, When I was in graduate school, I was working full time. My anxiety got so bad. I was suicidal, and my mom sat me down and said, you have to go to a therapist. Do you want me to find them, or do you want me to do it? And I was living at home at the time. I'd wake up having panic attacks, and she just sat there. She didn't say, calm down. She didn't say, get your shit together. She just sat there to make sure that I was safe, and
And then the next day I said to him, now you have to get your shit
Now you
together.
have to get your shit
Okay, it's enough.
But
It's enough, and I really don't have time for this bullshit. I used to tell my kids that divorce and death were not an excuse for bad behavior, because we saw it all the time. We saw it all the time. Raising a child on the North Shore of Chicago, you see divorce. It's as common as a grocery store. I mean, it's just, and those kids would start to spiral. And I would see that the parents were so wrapped up in what they were going through that they missed what the kids were going through. And I used to say all the time, just remember, and they would repeat back, we know death and divorce are not an excuse for bad behavior. And I said, just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. And, as they got older, I would say, he was having panic attacks and I'd be like, okay, nah, no, let's go. Like we got to figure this out. We have to fix it. It's not going to go away on its own. This is something serious. We got to take care of it. And, seeing a therapist is nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to, I said, I've seen a therapist since I was 6 or 7. The school would call and say to my parents, your kid's crying all the time. Something's wrong. We got to fix it. And, and I started going to therapy at 7 or 8. And to this day, I mean, the therapist that I saw when I was in my teens, the end of high school, and then through my beginning of my married life, I mean, I credit him with saving my life. I mean, there's no question. And now when I started seeing this new therapist, I said to her, I said, I'll know right away if you and I are a good fit, because I had the best therapist in the world. His name was Bob. And I said, and either you're going to cut it or you're not. And if you're not going to cut it, we're cutting our ties quick.
Yeah.
And, I mean.
But even like when my dad was dying, I remember we were in the hospital, Mom even kept saying, this isn't an excuse for bad behavior. You'll take the grievance time off for when we're sitting Shiva, but you're going right back to work. Like we say like a Jewish tradition, death is so easy because everybody comes to your home and you're bombarded with having to do things. And Mom was like, go to an open mic if you have to go, like do whatever you need to do to help yourself. And I remember when my dad died, she looked at us and said, we're going to get through this, but we can't be acting out. She still captained the ship. Her husband just died. And she still said, all right, I'll call the funeral home tomorrow. We're meeting at Shalom at this time. Everyone get there, and it was just, no matter what situations happen, death, illness, whatever, Mom was always just like the person who led the team. No bad behavior. We're sad, but we need to function as human beings as well. And it's just, that's been my whole life. And, a lot of comics don't have great relationships with their parents, or their parents are like, enough with this comedy. My family, I feel very lucky that I had 2 parents who are very supportive and very loving. And I continue to have a mom who is incredibly supportive, and she's no nonsense. If something's bad, she says it, if she thinks it's a bad idea, she doesn't want me to learn from experience. She just stops that right away. I remember in college, I was dating someone, and her and I got in fights constantly. And my dad and I had a lot of discussions, but my parents sat me down and were like, we've been married for all this time. We don't fight nearly as much as you guys do.
Yeah.
And you're in college. This is the easiest time in your life. Everything's provided for you. What happens when you can't pay the bills? Is this the person that if your house is being threatened to be taken away, are you going to be able to get through it with each other? And I thought to myself, oh, no, I can't marry her. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess not.
Wow.
I didn't even think of that. And so I'm very lucky to have a mom like her. So.
1,000%. What a rock, a blessing. So I have 2 more questions. The first one would be, since this is like stamped in time, what would you 2 like each other to know forever?
Any success I've had in my life is because of my mom. She laid the foundation at a young age of working hard. You may not like it, but sometimes you have to go through it. We also have the saying in our house, not every meal has to be your favorite. And I feel like that kind of is with everything in life. You may not like everything that you do. Not every job's going to be your favorite. Not every show is going to be your favorite, but sometimes you just have to do it. And, I was a terrible student growing up, and we found a college that was going to be good for me. I went to a small I went to Bradley University. It was a small school because we knew that I wasn't going to be able to skip class there.
Mm.
And then I got a master's degree because I would be down in the basement. I worked full time. I worked an hour and a half away. I'd come home and I'd be working until like 10 o'clock in the basement, and mom would just bring down dinner sometimes. And it was just whatever had to get done, she always made sure it worked. With comedy, she helps sell tickets to my shows because she knows that's the thing that stresses me out the most.
Yeah.
She knows that I'm going to do well on stage, but the stress of selling tickets, so she has helped with that. And I've just never had a success in my life that I can't credit her for. So
That's great.
We're a good team. We're a good team. That's what I would say, is that forever he knows we're a good team. We may not always agree, and I may not always get my way, though 98% of the time I do, but we are a good team.
Yeah.
We're a good team.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so my last question, and I feel like you've already dropped two amazing ones. The death and divorce is not an excuse for bad behavior, and not every meal has to be your favorite. Those are so juicy, but I want more if you got it. What would be your number one mama says advice, whether that's for kids or other parents, Melissa?
It would be those two things. Honestly, it would be those two things. Death, divorce, not an excuse for bad behavior. I feel like that applies to every kid in America, whether your parents are divorced, but there's been a death, a pet, a parent, a grandparent. It's just not an excuse. And I've seen so many kids start to spiral, their parents are spiraling, and it's not going to fix itself. So that's my number one thing. And I've always said it. And it's funny because when I say it to other parents, they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, if you go with that, you're never going to have a problem. Your kid's going to know what the boundaries are.
Yeah.
And I would say my other thing is that I'm not their friend. I'm not their friend. I am not the one that's going to go out. We'll go out to dinner, we'll go to the movies, whatever. But I am not Ringling Brothers here. I am not here to entertain you all weekend and we did plenty of things growing up. My kids wanted for nothing. I mean, they went on every trip and whatever. And not every meal has to be your favorite, because you know what? I was a terrible cook. I still am a terrible cook. We ate out all the time. And sometimes we ate at Culver's, and sometimes we ate at Morton's, and sometimes we ate at places in between. And I would let Jeremy pick, and Abigail would be like, ugh, I hate that. Or Abigail pick, and he'd be like, ugh, I hate that. I'm like, oh, not every meal has to be your favorite. It just has to be food. Nobody said we have to like it. Just eat or don't eat. I don't care. But, I'm not a short order cook, and we're not going from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant. And
Yes.
I think my kids knew that in our world, in the world of the four of us, they were the center of the attention. They were the ones. And I would say to Jeremy, whenever he'd be like, he always had school group projects, and I hate group projects. I hate them. And I always would say to them, be the volunteer that brings the pretzels. Be the volunteer that buys the poster board. You have no opinion. The girls in the group are going to be really bossy. You just do what they tell you. Don't offer, well, I think we should use pink, poster board. Nope. She wants purple. That's what we're buying, purple. And that's why he was always the boy picked to go into the girls group, because you couldn't have a group of 4 girls. No, you had to have 3 girls and a boy, or 3 boys and a girl. And they always picked Jeremy because he had no opinion, and they knew that. And they knew, and I would say, you're making your life much more difficult on yourself when you assert Like these girls are gonna, in 5th grade, gonna let you decide,
Right.
what the project's gonna be. No. You need to, we also taught them that they needed to get along in this world. It's not gonna be everything great, and not everything's gonna be wonderful, and not everything's gonna be perfect, but just get along. Just get along. I'm not interested in any of the other things. And we knew when Jeremy would leave home for whatever he was leaving home for, by day 6, he was ready to come home. It was overnight camp or trips to Israel or whatever. And sure enough, college. And I said to my husband, I said to him, let's just remember, he won't call me first because he knows what the answer will be. Okay, get along. So he'll either call my husband. I said, if he can't get you, he'll call my mother and father. So I would tell my parents all the time, remember, if he's in a car accident, they're not calling you first. So don't give anybody any money
Oh, yeah.
for, treatment. I said, and when he calls you to tell you he wants to come home, just hang up on him. Just say, Jeremy, not a good time. We got to go. Click. Because he knew. And sure enough, day 6 of Poland, my phone rang. I was in a.
Hold on. So senior year, there was a trip. There was one trip through my camp and one trip through my youth group. The camp one was too expensive, so I went through the youth group. So we'd spend 1 week in Poland where we'd see ghettos, concentration camps, different sites of the Holocaust. Huge bummer.
Yeah.
And then you spent a month in Israel. And so
Wow.
in Poland, we had to keep kosher. There was one kosher restaurant, and they would like give us a cucumber and the ramen seasoning and hot water. Like there weren't noodles. And we always say, like, if I'm in a bad mood, I either need to take a nap or I need to eat something.
Yes.
And so I was really jet lagged, and I was I was like really hungry, and I felt weird constantly complaining about how hungry I was going to these Holocaust locations. And but I like lost it. And I didn't know anyone on the trip, and someone said something to me that like really got me going, and I called home hysterical. And I was like,
I'm on my way home.
I told you I didn't want to be on this trip. I'm going home. I'll get a job, blah, blah, blah. And my dad was like, okay. And he was like friends with the director of the trip. And he called him. He was like, what's going on? And finally, my mom was like, he's not coming home. Blah, blah, blah.
And I said to him, I go, Jeremy, when was the last time I go, what about all those snacks in the bottom of your suitcase? And he goes, they're gone. He goes, I ate them and I passed them out to my friends. And okay. I said, when was the last time you slept? I don't know. I said, so you're hungry and you're overtired. I go, okay. I said, let me talk to the guy in charge. It's this Israeli guy. He's like, I don't even know his name. I go, we don't have to know his name. I just have to talk to him. Got him on the phone. And in Hebrew, I let this guy have it. I go, he's overtired. He is hungry. Get him into a bed. Get him food. I said, and he's not coming home.
And it doesn't have to be kosher. Just feed him something. He's doing like
just get him ice cream. Get him something. And sure enough, I said to Jeremy, okay, you can come home. I said, Dad, will buy the ticket and it'll be waiting for you at the airport. But don't go to the airport yet because I don't know when Dad will buy the ticket. And he goes, oh, okay. Sure enough, the next day he calls and he goes, I go, how are you doing? And I go, when are you going to the airport? And he goes, oh, I'm not going to the airport. I'm fine now. I'm good. I'm fine now. And I'm not going. And I said, oh, really? You're not going? He goes, no, I don't need to come home. We're going to Israel tomorrow. It'll be much better. I said, oh, really? It'll be much better.
They made us do a desert survival though in Israel. And I got a terrible stomach infection.
Oh my goodness.
And so I couldn't go hiking because I couldn't retain water. I was throwing up constantly. And these Israelis were like, okay, you'll drive home with the bags. You just sleep and we'll wake you up before we go. So I fell asleep and I wake up and nobody's there.
Oh my goodness.
All the bags are gone. The van's gone. And they gave us like these crappy flip phones. This was in 2009. And I like had one bar we're in the middle of the desert. There's no.
Oh my goodness.
And I call home and I leave a message being like, I told you I didn't want to go on this trip and you left me in the desert to die. And then my phone disconnected.
No!
So someone from it was like 3 a.m. in America, was like, or very late. They called the people in charge of the trip being like, Jeremy said he's dying in the desert.
We do something about that.
And like 45 minutes later, I just hear like this van zipping down the desert, and the guy was like, "I'm so sorry, I forgot about it." Like,
they really just forgot that.
Yeah. I was like behind a rock sleeping, and he didn't realize I was there.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Thank goodness you have who your mom is.
Yeah, seriously. Halfway across the world, she still saved my life.
But that's how we do things, and we know that that's how these things work, and we know that that's how this, And I even said to him when we dropped him off at college, I said, "All right, we'll talk soon." I said, "Remember the 6-day rule?" He goes, "I know, I'm not coming home." And I said to my husband, I go, "The kid's gonna graduate college." He goes, "It's the first day." I go, "I don't care. This kid is graduating college." I said, "That's why I picked this college. I picked this college so that if he called at breakfast, we could be there by lunch. If he called at lunch, we could be there at dinner. If he called at dinner, we could be there by midnight. That's why we picked this school." He thinks he picked the school. He had no say in it. I picked the school. And I said to him, "I found the college for you." I said, "And not everyone can get in." He goes, "Really?" I said, "Oh, yeah." And I would, we played that card all the time.
Well, we had a meeting with the college counselor. Everybody at my school had to do it. And we took a career aptitude test in case we didn't know what we wanted to do. But we were supposed to be prepared what colleges we wanted and all of that. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so he took out the results from the career aptitude test. And the 3 jobs were funeral home director, priest, or teacher.
Oh.
I looked at the counselor and I was like, "Well, I'm Jewish. I can't be a priest." And my parents were like, "Oh, he's not smart enough to make decisions yet. We'll figure it out." And they're like, "You're nice to kids with special needs. Become a special ed teacher." And I was like, "But I hate school." My dad was like, "You don't have to do homework. You're the teacher." And, that's how it ended up happening. So
That's wonderful.
yeah.
Well, it has been
lucky.
such a pleasure meeting you, Melissa.
Oh, thanks. It was great to meet you too.
I think you're 2 cool, amazing humans, hilarious, and I'm glad you have each other. This has just been a pleasure for me to get to sit in on y'all's relationship. So I'm grateful.
Oh, our pleasure.
And
Thanks for having us, Amber. This was a lot of fun.
1000%.